Jen from Fabulous Paper Emporium, and welcome to my channel. Today we have a fabulous video for you. We are making this Christmas card, and because of the size, we are going to make an envelope to go with it. Stay tuned and I'll show exactly how to do this. Okay, so I decided to do a quick little tutorial. I have been playing around with this die. It's a Spellbinders die. It is probably one of the biggest dies I have worked with. It says Christmas, and then obviously we've got a smaller die that comes with it that says Merry, and it basically is 8.5 by 3.5, the size of the main die, but I thought it would make a really cute Christmas card. So I've been playing around with it, and I just wanted to offer kind of like my 2 cents of how I put it together. So this is what my card fronts look like, minus the Merry. I haven't really started working on the Merry yet. And that's to give a bit of definition. You don't have to use another color for the background. If you do, it can be something like this. If you want to omit the background altogether. If you wanted to have the background, like obviously I chose black cardstock. If you chose a different color, maybe it would stand out more, that kind of thing. But anyhow, so here's my 2 cents. So when you are putting them together, I didn't worry about these little bits because then I truly might drive myself mad. This really is a die. If you like piecing things together and doing puzzles, I highly recommend this. It does put together a very beautiful card. So since I have everything pretty much ready to go, I cut I cut more than one, obviously, but if you're wanting to make 3 cards, you have that option of making 3 different cards. You just need 2 colors as your main focal point and 1 as the background. And the background obviously is going to cut out the letters for you. So in an effort to not waste, I have also put together some, or I will be putting together some that look like this, because you're going to have the background from the colors that you're focusing on. So this was just kind of the reverse, where I let the colors be kind of the background and that cream color be the foreground. So putting it together, I've cut myself a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 by 3.5. I want my letters to fit on there just perfectly, and I find that that piece, that size of cardstock will do the trick. And so if you're flipping back and forth between 2 colors, find it easiest if I have them all set out, then I'm not going to grab the wrong color. And you start, if you're cutting your piece exactly at 8.5 by 3.5, you are wanting to start right at that edge. Maybe even push it a little bit off, but just by a fraction. And then it's basically putting out the first couple of letters. The C, the H, R, and I are pretty easy because the H has a little groove cut out of it. You can see that. So that nestles right into the C very nicely. I'm going to move the Merry off to the side. And then the R obviously butts up to that really nicely as well. So before I actually set it down, I kind of like push it into, so I know I'm right up against the previous letter. And that way there's no gap, and you're not going over it. So it is pretty easy. And then when we get to the S you would think should also be pretty easy. But if you are going to be using a background, the bottom hook and the top hook are not the same shape. So I brought out, this is the piece that fits in here. So this way it fits really nicely. Let me put it down so you kind of see what I'm talking about. And if I were to flip this around, there's a gap. It does not fit in there as it did on the bottom. So that's my first check, is I want to check and make sure that the background, if I'm using it, is going to fit in there nice and neat. When I got my up from my down, then I apply it just like I do any of the others. I kind of push it into the eye and have that placed down. And then if I am using the background, which I am, I'm just going to take this background piece and set it in. And the reason why, it's going to give me the proper spacing for the T. Now the T does have a little bit notched out, so it will settle in right there next to the S, but I want to make sure that I'm not off even by a little bit to the left or to the right, because it's easy to certainly manipulate it one way or another, and then, you know, I'm all wonky and whatnot. The same thing with here. And I'm just realizing I'm kind of missing one of my background pieces. But your next background piece that you will fit in, it goes in right here, and it's like an eye, but it's a little bit thinner. Bear with me just 1 second. I'm just taking a look at my work area because I might have misplaced it. Okay, so here is the little insert that fits in right next to the T. And again, it just gives you a very flat area to apply the M to. Whoops, I'm just over there. What? It's also the nice part of using the liquid glue is you can apply it and you can kind of move it around a little bit. So highly recommend using, you know, a liquid glue and something with that precision tip so that you're not, whoops, I'm down a bit. There we go. And the M, just kind of let that fall down so that it also is not too wonky. Haven't had any problems with the M's. It's really the S and the T that kind of can make things go a little bit astray. So put the A and then the S. This S is definitely one that's on the end because you've got a little bit cut out there. So this way it butts up to that A really nicely. So you put that to there and everything kind of falls into place. And that's how I lay it all down. Okay, so in the next part, I'm just going to set that aside because I've got some already to go. All I've done for the next pieces that I've cut out is, oh, that wasn't what I wanted to use. I had one that was out. Anyhow, that's fine. I'm going to use this one. For the Mary, because I wanted to give it a little bit more of added dimension, there's actually 3 layers. So I just cut it out 3 times with black cardstock. And I am not sure if I'm going to put one of the colors on top. I think I'm going to just go with the black. I can always add some, you know, glitter to it afterwards. My second piece, my matte piece, which I'm going to do like that, is cut at 8 5/8 by 8 1/4 by 3 1/4. Yes, 8 1/4 by 3 1/4. So that's going to layer on like that. So I'm going to layer all of these pieces on. Now I'm just using all of the cardstock that I've used for this project is all 65 pound, except for my card base, which is 110 pound, because it's a fairly chunky, weighty kind of card. But when I put this on, I'm actually going to use some of my double-sided tape, not double-sided tape, my foam tape, which I'm looking for, but can't find. There we go. And so I'm just going to run a few strips all the way down along the length. And then I've got my card base. And so the card base is cut at 9 inches by 8 inches. So 9 inches by 8 inches, scored at 4. I'm just going to peel this off the adhesive backing. And we're going to get that centered. Should really fold that, because otherwise I'm not going to do a great job of getting it centered. And even there, you know what, I need to stand up. I need to get a better vantage point for the application of this layer, which is still not working for me. Oh my goodness. Okay, too high, too low, 2 to the right, 2 to the left. There we go. Okay, and then my Mary is just going to go up here, making sure that I don't put any of the letters backwards. And that's going to be like our card. So the Mary does give you, it also obviously becomes a little bit thicker, but it just gives you a little bit of the dimension without having, it's a very stylized Mary. So I feel like if I were to try and put on some foam tape, it would just be a hot mess. So getting the letters on, not only so getting the letters to pop up a little bit that's a kind of a quick and easy way of doing it, is to add several layers of your cardstock. Whoops. When you're cutting it out. Layering them was really easy, so I don't feel like that would be problematic. It's a little bit more tedious. I feel like those are leaning over. There, and I had a little bit of cardstock and the Y. I could and should be using, like I did when I was layering them, I had my reverse tweezers, which are now all gummed up with glue. So I'll need to get those all fixed. Like, okay, I'm just gonna fiddle around with that. And there we have our Merry Christmas card. Okay, so the finishing touches to this card, I have added 2 of these little gems. These are like flat back pearls that we have in our store. These are something relatively new, so anyways, they work perfectly for cards as an embellishment. And as well, we have cut a piece of the cream or ivory cardstock to go on the inside, because obviously with it being a black card base rather, then it's going to need something so that when you are writing on it, it's easier to see. And so this piece of cardstock is 8 3/4 by 3 3/4. And I just happen to have these snowflake punches. I'm trying to remember the name. Snowflake punches in my stash, so I punched a bunch of the small and the larger ones, and I just kind of coordinated it with the color that I decided to use for the outside. The first layer, and I did a couple in the, give me one second. So if, you know, obviously with the green on the first layer, I chose to use the green, and for the ones where I use burgundy, I use this red kind of color. So anyhow, so that's what I did for those, and obviously the green have the green little snowflakes inside. Okay, so now we get to the part that is more necessary. If you're wanting to give this card as it is, obviously that's not a problem. If you want to put it in a gift bag or in a gift, that is easy too. If you want to put, like, if your gift is going in the card, ergo like a gift card or money or a check or whatever, then you're going to need to have a envelope. And because of that size, your standard punch board does not go to 9x4. The largest this goes to is, well, as far as we need something that is going to be like a 4x9, and this goes to 4x8.5. Why that is, I'm not entirely sure, but it is what it is. So anyway, so I've been fiddling around with this for a little bit, but I think I've got it down. So we are going to start with our cardstock. So this piece of cardstock is 11 by 11, and we are going to start by turning it so that you have the points to facing you. And for this, it really is helpful if you have a long ruler or something that you can do a long line, or like I'm just doing a pencil line from tip to tip. So I've got a pencil line drawn for that. Then I'm going to spin it around, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. And this way it gives me kind of a bit of a grid to go by. So from there, we know that our finished card is 9 inches long or wide. Not really sure if that's width or anyways. So by 9 inches, we are going to want to, plus we're going to make this a bit of like a, I guess it's called like a box card. So anyways, we're going to make 2 lines. I just so happen to have this ruler that has like a 0 mark right in the middle. So you're going to measure to either side. So I'm measuring 4 3/4, and I've got a pencil mark. I've got another pencil mark at 4 7/8, and I made another pencil mark down here at 4 3/4 and 4 7/8. I did the same thing on the left-hand side. So whatever you do to the right, you're going to do to the left. And now I'm going to measure above this line, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to measure, I'm just going to make sure that I've got my check marks all in line, which I do. And then I'm going to make another mark at 4 3/4 and 4 7/8, and 4 3/4 and 4 7/8. So again, I've got all my lines. And this way, when I come over here, I'm going to take my bone folder, and I'm going to score at both the 4 3/4 and 4 7/8. Okay, so this is going to add a little bit of a buffer to our card. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing over on this side. Okay, just make sure everything is lined up nicely. I'm having a hard time because these pencil marks are not super dark. Okay. Sorry, having just a bit. Okay, you know what? I'm going to spin this around. I just can't see that one too clearly. There we go. That's much easier. Okay, so we have some of our score lines. So now we're going to spin it around. And we also know that the card is 4 inches wide, so, or 4 inches tall. So we did the width, so that should be more than enough to fit our card. And it does fit nicely. I don't want this to be super tight. We have embellishments. We have some foam tape. So for these measurements, we are going to go. So again, I'm centering my ruler, and we are going to measure 2 1/4 and 2 3/8, and we're going to put a little line on the top and the bottom of the ruler, and the same thing on the left side. So 2 1/4, 2 3/8, top and bottom, and then from the top. From the top of our line, our center line, we are going to make those marks again. And again, we're going to turn this around, and we are going to use our bone folder to score. It is easier if you score outside lines first and then move to the inside, because trying to get things lined up in the by trying to, like, I'm using the score line as a guide as well, so you know, this way I can confirm that my line is going to be straight. And it's hard to see if you are trying to look through, even though it's clear, it's hard to see through. Anyhow, so that is our finished item. I know the lines are probably very difficult to see, but that is how we have it lined up so far. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we are cutting the inside of our score line. So the most inside one, we're going past the first score line at the bottom. And then we're going to do, again, the most inside score line. So we're cutting away all of the score lines that appear in that little corner. And no, there is no way you're going to see that, because, you know, it's dark paper and all sorts of things. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab a white pen. So we have a score line here, a score line here. So I cut on this score line and this score line. So you see what I mean by cutting that away? I'm just going to mark that really quickly on this side before I do any cuts, hoping that my white marker, or white pen rather, this is not the best. There we go. Okay, so that's what the corner looks like. So I'm going to go the inside most score line, cut along there, And then I'm going to go on this score line, this most inside score line, and cut that off. Okay, and you're going to do that to the 4 corners where your score lines meet. And that will cut away the bulk and allow us to make our folds nice and cleanly. Okay, perfect. So now it's a matter of, we're going to, I was going to say it's a matter of folding, but before we do that, there are 2 things that I want to do. We're going to have to trim some off the top and some off the bottom. So 2 1/8. 2 1/8. And we are going to, oh, you know what? I should. I'm going to put that right there as well, so I can measure 2 1/8. There. So the 2 1/8 is going to be for our bottom. And I'm just going to, you can take your paper trimmer, guillotine. Okay. So that I'm just going to do a line, and then we are going to cut that corner away. Okay. So that's done. And then from the other side, we are just going to measure 2 inches and do the same thing. So I am going to, and this is going to be for our top, like the flap that folds over, because otherwise it's too big. And this tip ends up being well past the top or the bottom of the card. So it has a very weird look. Okay. So now we're going to go about folding. And I know that folding 1/8 gusset is challenging to say the least. So what I have found works best is I find one of my score lines, and then I use the ruler to kind of force the score line to bend. And this way, there we go. Okay, it does take a little bit of finessing, so try not to lose patience. And then the second score line. Okay, and we're going to just pull that over and get our fingers at the bottom. Okay. And it's just, it doesn't have to sit up really straight. You really do just want to have a bit of extra room for your card. That's really all we're after here. And then we do the sides. I'm going to fold that back down for a minute so that we can get our sides done. Sides are decidedly easier because, you know, you're not working an extensive, like an extended length of cardstock. So I don't feel like, you know, the sides don't really need to have the aid of the ruler. We do need, we do not need to have these burnished really, really, really well also. So don't worry if you're able to kind of manipulate it with your fingers. Don't worry, it will be fine. Okay, and then this top one, this one, I'm wondering, this one doesn't seem to be very straight, but okay, so I'm just, because of course now I've been kind of, there, that's the top. One of these, oh, you know what? That's because I changed the measurements. We're going to need to trim just a little bit more off the bottom. And the reason being is when I'm putting my score tape, I want my score tape to go up this little side and come all the way across. And if I do that, I'm going to actually be I'm going to be gluing it down to the base, and I don't want that. So I am going to just quickly measure. What we have here is about 1/4 of an inch. So I am going to take this 1/4 of an inch off. And I did not cut that very straight either. Okay. So I'm going to be able to, now I have it perfectly lined up, and I'll grab this really quickly. So this is what I mean, is you want the end of this point to come, not go any further past this piece. Right? So I have them lined up perfectly. So what you're going to have to cut off from the bottom, because I just trimmed off 1/4 of an inch, what you're going to need to trim off the bottom is going to be 2 3/8, not 2 1/8. Okay. I apologize. So now I'm going to grab some of my score tape. Okay, so the score tape that I'm using is 1/4 inch, and you're going to go from the score line. I gotta turn this around. From this second score line, so the one that is furthest to the left now. And I'm looking for my handy dandy doodad, and it's always someplace that I can find it usually, and I don't know where I put it. Okay. It's not that the score tape is hard to tear. I just want to be very precise with it. That's the only thing here. And what I'm going to do is peel that off. And now I'm going to go from the corner, because I want to have this overlapping. And you really want to get it just as close to that line, to the edge as you possibly can. So that's one of our sides. And now I'm going to do the bottom. Okay, I'm going to peel that off so that we can get right into that corner. So it's seamless, basically. Nobody's going to see this. It's all going to be hidden anyways. But regardless. Okay, so that's the bottom. We're going to peel off one side. So So I'm folding this in, and I want to try and make sure that it's standing upright and that we're going to be pulling this bottom piece over because we have that little gusset, right? That's going to allow a little bit of extra bounce, a little bit of extra room. And then we're going to peel off the other side. But before that, I want to fold that in there and do the same thing. So I'm pushing up and getting that connected. And now I can just reach in and pull the rest of that tab out. And here is the test. It is, I know it's a lot larger than what we need, but sometimes it's better to be a little bit more generous. And then we can just add some score tape to these flaps. And for this, again, 1/4 inch would be just as good. And for that, I'm going to add it to this side. Now I'm not gonna overlap this time because I'm not going to be the one to tear this off. This is going to be up to the recipient, right? And so I've done that side, and I'm going to just square this off again and do this side. You don't have to worry about doing like this angled thing at either end. It's just a preference. It's my silly preference. That's all it is. And then there's going to be a little bit of a gap there, but really we're using score tape, so I don't think that will be a problem. Okay, and then the recipient will hopefully be able to tell that this is 3 pieces of score tape that they can then remove and seal the envelope. So that is the envelope for our supersized Slimline card, our Merry Christmas card, and obviously our Christmas card. So thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully you are finding some Christmas inspiration in July with this card, and you found it useful or helpful in some way. If you have any comments, any feedback, any questions, please post them in the comments below. I read all of them. If you're not already a subscriber, I would really appreciate that you would consider becoming one of our fabulous friends. The more the merrier in this group, that's for sure. So hopefully you have a fabulous rest of your day and you stay safe and well. We'll see you next time. Bye.